It's kind of an open secret that Disney underreports the budgets of their movies. So if it doesn't do too well in the theaters, they can say it didn't lose as much money as it did. Or if it does really well, then they can say it made more money than it did. So it's only a win-win for them. Personally, I think that's kind of defrauding the shareholders, but there's a lot of creative accounting that they can do to make this like legal and legitimate or whatever. So I guess they're above board on that sense, but I don't know, it just seems kind of shady to me. But still, keep that in mind and then look at this article from Bounding into Comics. The Little Mermaid production budget soared to nearly $300 million, more than doubling its losses at the box office. And it was previously estimated, it wasn't reported, it was just estimated that their budget for this movie was around $250 million. And that came from Variety around the time the movie was released. And with that, they even said it still needed to do a pretty successful box office run in order to break even. And it really hasn't done that, even though people have tried to claim that this movie was successful. A new report from Caroline Reed at Forbes reveals the film's budget swelled to nearly $300 million by the end of August last year, 8 months before the movie opened. Now, realistically, 8 months before the movie opens, I mean, they're still doing some stuff with it. There's a lot of post-production work they have to do. There's a lot of reshoots and things like that. But right now, for the sake of argument, let's say there was not a dime spent on the like production aspect of it. Putting aside marketing, that's something completely different, but nothing on the production aspect of it. Caroline Reed got UK tax filings that actually came from the subsidiary company to this Sandcastle Pictures, because when Disney starts a production or pretty much any production, but particularly in the UK, they establish a subsidiary company that manages all that, and that's where they get the tax filings and stuff. So if you actually were able to find the name of the company that's doing that, then you can look up the tax filings in the UK, because the studios actually have to disclose over there when they're shooting movies there how much they spent on the movie, because then they get certain tax breaks for it. And with the $56.8 million that they got back from the UK government, that meant the final total was around $240 million that they were invested, which means the final cost of the movie had to have been around $300 million. And like I said, 8 months before the release of the movie, they spent around that much money before getting the 56.8 back, which means they were invested $240.2 million. So let's just round down and say $240 million. Pulling out the calculator here, $240 million. I'm just going to abbreviate that. Now, jumping over to this article from Collider that's talking about it, it still has the old estimates, because this was from, when did this article come out here? August 2nd. So yeah, a couple months ago. So it said that, but I mean, this is what they actually had as the marketing budget for the $140 million. But okay, let's assume that they had a really light marketing push for this movie and they only gave it $100 million, even though 140 is pretty standard for a movie of this size from Disney. Let's just say they spent $100 million on it. So I'm just going to do that, add another 100 to this. Okay, that means they were invested $340 million into this movie before it went to the theaters. Now, keep in mind, studios don't get 100% of the box office that comes back. They actually get closer to 50%. I mean, it varies. I think in the US, it's like 60%. And in China, it's like 20%. And other countries are in the middle. But as a good rule of thumb, they get 50%, which means you need to double this value right here in order to break even, which means if you multiply it by 2, $680 million is what they had to actually make in order to break even. Looking at Box Office Mojo, I'll round up and say they got $570 million. So subtract $570 million from this, and they lost $110 million on this movie. Now, keep in mind, like I said, I was being generous with the reporting on this, saying that they haven't shot anything else. Realistically, there was probably a bunch of stuff that they actually had to shoot, a lot of post-production work. I mean, these CG creatures don't make themselves. I mean, it's not completely AI just yet. So let's just say it probably is closer to $300 million mark on this. So 300. And then the marketing budget probably was more closer to $140 million. That means they were invested $440 million into this movie. And then you multiply that by 2. That's $800 million or $880 million. And if you subtract it by the $570 that they made at the box office, they lost around $310 million on this movie right here. If you look at this list from MovieWeb, the biggest box office bombs of all time, John Carter, that lost between 133 to 236, whereas this Little Mermaid one is around 110 to $330 million. So not a good sign for that. I mean, that definitely puts it at the number 1 spot. I mean, of course, we don't necessarily know all the budgets of this. We don't know like I don't know, all the marketing is. Like I said, the marketing's still estimated. That's a different tax filings entirely. And the way Disney does their accounting, I mean, they can spread it around amongst other parts of the company and stuff like that. So we won't know what the actual loss is, but what we can tell for sure is that this was a huge loss for Disney, and looking forward to other projects that they have coming out, like that live action Snow White is looking pretty grim for them. I mean, reportedly that actually has a higher budget than this Little Mermaid one, and it has way more controversy surrounding that movie and the lead actress Rachel Zegler compared to this movie. So yeah, I think Disney is kind of worried about that, and I'm surprised that they're actually still going through with it. I mean, right now with the amount of money that this movie lost, it's looking like with that Snow White one, they could probably make more or be better off if they just scrapped it entirely and took a tax write-off. But that's just my personal opinion. Let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And if you like this video, make sure you click that like button, share the video, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stay up to date with the latest news. Thank you.